You're listening to The Broken Meeple Show, a podcast that speaks passionately about board games for the benefit of those who play them. My name's Luke Hector, best known for the Broken Meeple YouTube channel, and I'm an everyday gamer just like you. And I'll be talking about reviews, top 10s, and just about anything that connects me to board games, as long as I have a tea or coffee in hand, that is. So grab a cup, relax, and enjoy. And remember, it's only a game. Hey everyone, welcome to the show, and the first big news I have to tell you about is a solemn one. Some bad news, people. Very bad news. The blog is dead! There's no more blog! Just kidding. It's not that bad. No. I'm just playing with you. Basically, I recently had a vote as to what I needed to do with a certain asset I had in this channel, and it was my blogger page. When I started off as the Broken Meeple, I started writing reviews. I put them on Board Game Geek eventually, but there was also a written page. And then since about a couple of years back, it's basically just been used as a hub. So as well as posting things to YouTube and to SoundCloud, I was also uploading the link to the Blogger Hub. I don't know why I did for ages, but the thing is I had to keep it updated with that. I'd fall behind. There was a little scrolling picture slideshow on there that I had to update by saying coming soon and all that lot. And it just it became such a hassle to do it. So I did a vote as to whether I needed to do it, and about 90% of people didn't even know it existed. So I basically just went and removed it. So yes, if you go to the blogger page, it'll say, sorry, the blog at brokenmeeple.blogspot.com has been removed. The address is not available for new blogs. Yeah, basically I've got 90 days if I want to put it back online, but frankly, I just don't see the point. You know, my income for the channel is done through YouTube and Patreon, what little there is, and the site just never did anything for me. It was just an administration burden, and I'm kind of half glad to be rid of it. So yeah. So if you are looking for that hub and you see the blog has been removed, relax, that was me, and it's not an indicator of things to come or whatever. It's just that, the podcast SoundCloud hub will now do for the podcast, which will link to Spotify and Apple and all that lot anyway. And the channel, the YouTube, is my primary hub. So that's what you're going to get. Nothing too bad about that, I hope. So what's the deal with today's podcast? Well, this is a bit of a review extravaganza, really, because I've got a lot of games I got to review, and some I'm doing videos for, some I'm going to attempt to do a live stream review of it, which should be interesting. I'm thinking maybe Alma Mater could be a first one for that, or maybe... actually, it probably will be that one, actually. And I've also got like a solo player role player in the bag. I've got a movers and shakers video with Cooper Island in the bag. I need to do a lot of other content. Not to mention I need to finish off the top 100, which I've now recorded the 40 to 31 episode. So I just need to edit it, and I'll get that out this week, hopefully by Wednesday if I can help it. But don't bank on that. I might have to make that the end of the week. But the idea is that I can then do next week, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, probably, or those 3 days are more likely, a live stream event to do the other 30. So in a week, you could hopefully get the rest of the top 100 done. Yes, it's a live stream, but I will keep the focus on the games. You can, of course, come and watch it live. I'll talk about the games. You can make your comments in the chat, try and guess what game I'm on about, give your rating out of 10, talk with each other. But I will be focusing it more on the top on the list, rather than doing an interactive back and forth Q&A. Maybe I'll do a few minutes of it at the very end, but I'm not going to constantly stop the show to talk with the chat and make the video stupid long. I want to try and keep the video down to about 45 minutes or so, in line with how long it's taken the others to do, which is about 35 minutes odd. So if I can manage that, then it's all good. But sorry, you can look out for that in the not the long run, actually. You can find out about that next week, probably. So what else has come out on the channel? Well, quite a bit, actually. I've been somewhat busy, it has to be said. As I say, the role player insert review has been done, and that is going to air on the 27th. So look forward to that one. That will wrap up all the folded space inserts I've done. Just done top 150 to 41. That is released. You can go check that out on the channel. The Caverna insert review is done. More top 100 juiciness. the last Broken Meeple show. So mostly it has been top 100 material because I've had to play a bunch of games recently as opposed to review them. But you will be able to look forward soon to Tekenu. A video has been recorded for that. Another video has been done for Mysterium Park. You will get a review of that one. And I thought I'd done a third one. Maybe I'm getting confused with Alma Mater, and that's the one I need to do as a stream review. But I've certainly done Mysterium Park and Tekenu, so those are definitely coming. But you will have also noticed I did a solo play. I actually did a solo play digital live stream. This was an experiment to see how it would work, and I think it went pretty well. It was the Wingspan digital board game, and I think the app is fantastic. I think it's a great implementation, but I think the stream went well. I loaded it up, the audio worked fine, we tweaked it a little bit at the start, but nothing major. The stream didn't fail, the picture didn't fail. The only thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to reduce the size of my webcam and live chat window when I'm doing these particular streams because the game aspect ratio gets a little bit squished and I want that to be a little bit larger for you lot. You don't need to see my ugly face the entire time in those streams, and well, you're going to see it anyway, but you don't need to see it in big form. And the live chat window should be big enough to handle, the amount of people that are there. So yeah, that solo play was really good. So I look forward to doing some more app plays in the future. People have put requests. I think there was Roll for the Galaxy. There was a Flashpoint Fire Rescue I want to do. There's obviously Mystic Vale. There's all sorts that I can do on top of tabletop solo plays. But don't worry, there will be tabletop solo plays. They just won't be live streams. They will be pre-recorded because I can't have the laptop on because I record overhead with my mobile phone. And the speaker is great for picking up my voice. It's actually clearer than I thought it would be. Unfortunately, it picks up a lot of other surrounding noise, and that can include stuff outside if it's close by, so I do it at quiet times, but also it will pick up the fan noise from the laptop, and if I'm trying to use the webcam to stream, the laptop's very quiet at the moment, strangely, but it usually is during podcast season. As soon as I try to do a recording down there, though, yeah, it's just going to make fan noise, and then you'll hear it on the phone. It's just not worth it. So the solo plays on tabletop will be pre-recorded, and as I said, Role Player with the expansions has just been done. It is set up on the table as I see it now, with my last character doing a successful solo run, beating down the Cyclops. What was he? A Kayla? Or something like that? It's a penguin. It's kind of weird. A penguin with a screech owl as a familiar. It was a very strange priest to build, but a good fun game, and I hope you enjoy the video on that as well. So, what do we have first on the review list? I've got 3 reviews. They're going to be shorthand, compared to normal reviews, but this is mainly because they obviously don't get as much buzz as some of the major reviews I've had to do, but also just because some reviews have to be done in a different format. And some of these games, there's not a huge amount to talk about. Certainly 2 of them in particular. One of them's a bit longer, and hopefully you'll still get a benefit there. So, looking at the first one, we've got Splendor Marvel. Splendor Marvel. Now, if you have played Splendor and like Splendor, you'll like Splendor Marvel. There's no reason you wouldn't. They are 99% identical. There is such an identical cash grab, it is unreal. Same player count, 2 to 4. Same playing time, 30 minutes. Same designer, Marc-Andre. Publisher, Space Cowboys. Everything is the same, apart from the fact that it's got Thanos on the front and it's got the word Marvel in it. So, question is, what's the point? Well, the idea with this is that they have basically tweaked it with about 2 or 3 differences here between this and the normal Splendor. It doesn't include any expansion elements from the original Splendor expansion, which is a bit of a shame, but basically the artwork is now reminiscent of like Marvel superheroes. So you've got Captain Marvel here, Hulk, Groot, Ghost Rider, even the people that weren't necessarily involved with the Infinity Gauntlet, although I am talking purely from a movie perspective. I don't know about the comics. I think loads of Marvel heroes and villains were associated with the comic version of Infinity War. But as you can see, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and some locations, i.e. nobles, for the tiles. You've got 5 gem colors. You've got yellow, red, orange, blue, and purple. Where's green, you ask? We'll get onto that. Shield tokens for the gold, effectively. But there is a couple of different tweaks, aside from the artwork, which is decent. Some of it's recycled from other properties, like Fantasy Flight, I've noticed have used a couple of images here. I recognize the She-Hulk one for a kickoff. But the artwork is decent. I don't know if I prefer it to the original Splendor. I think the original Splendor is a bit better, but this is still fine. The graphic design is pretty much the same. But here are your key differences. The green gem is actually a green timestone gem that you have to get in order to even progress to win the game. And the only way to get one of those green gems is to buy a tier 3 card. So it actually forces you to buy one of the tier 3 cards before you finish the game. Because sometimes you could win by not buying any of the tier 3 cards. And I don't know whether that's a good inclusion or not, because you've basically taken out another path to victory. But maybe they were just worried about the fact that people used to do that path to victory too often. So maybe this is a way to kind of force you to at least get one of those cards, if not more. But that's a small little niggle. The end game condition is a bit like what Cities did you. It's basically a tile which says you need 16 points instead of 15, don't ask me why. And you need the green timestone gem I just mentioned, and one of each colour. Whoopee. How many times have you played Splendor and not had all 5 colours in front of you? Seriously. As far as I'm aware, that never happens, not having all 5 colours. The bit I do quite like as a new addition, though, is this Avengers tile here. It's like one of the locations, and the locations work the same way. You're double-sided, you put 4 of them in, get those cards, you get the location. It's pretty much self-explanatory. The Avengers tile is a little bit different, though. You might notice on some of these heroes here, if you look very closely, War Machine and She-Hulk here, for example, and even, I think, Miss Marvel down the bottom, and some of these higher ones, they've got the A Avengers symbol on them, as well as the bonus gem that they produce. They may produce like less points because of it. And the idea is that whoever has the most Avenger symbols at any one time takes the tile and it's worth 3 points. But this can pass between players if another player overtakes you on the symbols. I found this to probably be the best change they've put in Splendor, in this version of it anyway. The idea that you have 3 points that could go from the leader to someone else if they just catch them up by other means. The fact that somebody could try and get back into the game by, oh, I'm a bit behind on points, but if I've got the Avenger symbols and I can grab 3 points there, go for that location and work my way up that way. This is really cool, and I wish the original Splendor had something like that in the expansion, but sadly, you'd have to redesign all the cards, so that's pretty unlikely. But yeah, in terms of what I think of the game, it's Splendor. What more do you need to know? It's Splendor. Do you like Splendor? Yes, well then you'll like this game. Would you need to own both? Hell no. So you really would not. They are pretty much the same game. I mean, I have got both. I actually don't know if I'm going to keep this one or the previous one. They're that similar. Granted, I much prefer looking at Marvel characters than I do random alchemists or whatever merchants the other one had. But then I've got an insert, and although the insert you could argue, be transferred to the new box, but I've got the expansion cities in that one. Granted, I only use 1 or 2 of the modules in it, but I still have it. I guess I don't use it that often, so maybe I could keep this Marvel one and leave that, but then how many people are going to be desperate to play a Marvel version? Would they not like the Marvel license? It's a tough call. I honestly don't know which I prefer. They are just so alike. The endgame condition, whoop-de-doo. Putting the extra timestone gem thing in, it's cool. I don't think it was necessary, but take it or leave it. The main thing that I really like about it is that Avengers tile. But am I going to keep this edition purely because of that? Can't be. But the Cities expansion for the original Splendor has the, what were they called? The Oracle cards or something? Like the extra tier 1, 2, and 3 cards. They're amazing. I love those. I play with those all the time if I use my copy. And I also like the, what are they called? The trading merchants. The ones where when you get certain combination of cards, you got special powers for the rest of the game. I like that as well. It makes it a bit more meaty, but I really like it. So do I want to chuck that in favor of this? I don't know. It's a tough call, but I mean, I give Splendor an 8 out of 10. I'd give this one an 8 out of 10 as well. It's Splendor. It's Splendor with a different license. If you've not played the original Splendor, you could happily jump into this one and get essentially the same experience. You basically just could pick either or based on whether you're a fan of Marvel. I mean, that's pretty much the case. Do you like Marvel? In which case, get this one. Are you not fussed? Then consider the old one if you think you're going to expand it. I would probably say that without the expansion being considered, I would prefer the Marvel set. I think it's a little bit more complete overall, but with that expansion factored in, I would say the old one. It is such a tough call, and it really is going to come down to your personal preference. But it is still, at the end of the day, Splendor, which is still a fun engine building game. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Let's move on to another game. Let's see. Next one, I think I'll pick. Well, let's see. I can barely see because the clamp with my webcam is actually getting in the way of the scroll bar, which is really annoying. Here we go. What's Missing? Now, you probably weren't expecting this on my list of review games, but occasionally I get some party games, and I do like a nice party game from time to time, and this one seemed interesting. This one I think's been released a few times in the past. This is now like a 2020 version of it. 3 to 6 players, 20 minutes. Weight 1 out of 5, so I mean this is like not a very complex game at all. Done by Ludinaut, who to be fair I have not really heard of for a long time now. They kind of sort of sat in the back as far as I'm aware from stuff that I wanted to do. But essentially what's missing is that it's a drawing game. So think Telestrations, Pictionary, Pictomania, that kind of thing. And the idea is that you've got a bunch of cards sorted by difficulty, and oh, sorry, get my breath back there. In a round, each player takes a card and puts it behind like a flip chart with a translucent, almost like not tracing paper, but a translucent cover on it. And the idea is that you're not allowed to draw the actual image on the card. What you do is that you draw everything else that would normally be around it. So let's say you had a picture of a shark. So you put the shark card any orientation you like within underneath the transparent layer. And then instead of drawing the shark, you draw the sea, a boat. You probably can't draw the fin, but you could draw like somebody screaming, swimming away or something. You could draw a harpoon gun. I don't know, think something out of Jaws. But you get the point. You would be able to draw everything else except for that. And then the other players have to guess what is missing on the transparent paper. So they're going to see this image of a bunch of stuff and a sort of blank spot, hopefully, if they can tell where it is, in the middle, or anywhere really, it depends what it is. And essentially, whoever guesses correctly gets a point, and the drawer loses a point if no one guesses, so they want someone to guess it. And then you basically just carry on until eventually you get to a certain number of points, or call the game, basically. I mean, you can make this as long or as short as you like. However, this is what I'm a little bit sort of iffy on this one. To win, being clever is more important than being a good artist. I'm not convinced. Now, Telestrations, I love Telestrations, that is in my collection in the other room. And Telestrations is good because you have no care whether you can draw or not. I can't draw for toffee at all. My drawing skills are abysmal. And so I don't really care if I draw well in Telestrations because it doesn't really matter. But it's encouraged to draw badly in Telestrations because it just makes it more funny. There's no winner and loser in Telestrations, it's just having a laugh. The problem with the problem with this one is that I don't believe that being clever is enough. I mean, let's say I've got to draw a pig. Let's say the pig is my transparent thing. So I decide, right, I'm going to draw farm stuff around it. Would you like to see what my tractor looks like when I draw it? Would you like to imagine the child scaring horror of my dogs and like animals that I can draw? No. And if people can't recognize the stuff you're drawing on the outside, then how are they going to have any clue of knowing what it is that you have not drawn? There may be some that are easier than others. I mean, this picture you can see here is the moon, a shining moon. It's like, well, okay, you draw a starry night and somebody on there in a tree and the moon will be the next one. So that one's relatively easy. But when you flip through the cards, you notice that there's quite a lot of really hard ones in there. I mean, they are sorted by difficulty, so you can do the easier ones and migrate to the hard ones. But I mean, the hard ones, wow. You have got to be a good artist with the hard ones. You cannot just be clever, as it says. With the easy ones, you generally can, and some will flummox you, some won't. Medium, I think, is a good balance, but otherwise, I would never really want to play this on hard, because I would just not be able to draw very well, and I'd be screwed. I would have no chance to get through it. And there are some really detailed ones. I mean, the ones in this picture is a moon and a palm tree or stuff like that. Okay, that stuff's not particularly difficult, but you can have one where it's like an intrinsically detailed animal and it's in a weird pose and you've got to somehow make that fit with everything else. It's like, excuse me? How am I supposed to do that? In terms of the game enjoyment, it's fine. I don't think this one's really going to get heard of. I mean, the concept is interesting, trying to draw everything else except for the subject matter. I like the component quality. I mean, you get some pens, you get the dry erase flip pad, you've got the card you just put underneath a separate layer, so stuff's reusable. It's not like you're wasting any paper or anything, so components are pretty decent overall for what is a fairly cheap party game. I just don't know if I would play this over something like Telestrations, which, this What's Missing has actually got a winner and loser thing in it because people are earning points. So I feel that because I can't draw very well, I'm doing worse than somebody who can draw well. They may not necessarily need to draw the item in there, but because they can draw such a good picture, it's not too difficult to figure out, oh yeah, that's what they've got. Now, granted, you could try and win the game by just being very quick at guessing, but then that requires you to be quicker off the mark than the other players. And so, again, I'm just not sure I like the idea that there is a winner and loser here, because I certainly don't win this very much. I mean, I can kind of guess what other people are doing, but people struggle to guess anything I've drawn. I would just rather play Telestrations and Pictomania, personally. Telestrations is just flat out funny as hell. That's a great game. And Pictomania actually does fit the description of being clever is better than drawing well, because in Pictomania, you not only have to draw something that other players can guess right from a category, but then you also have to guess what the other players have done based on their drawings, and it's done at speed. And I have won games of Pictomania mainly because I'm very good at getting off the mark and guessing what everyone else has done, even if they don't necessarily guess what I've done. And also, you don't have to be a Picasso-like artist, Michelangelo, when you're playing that game. You just have to get the point across because the categories are already listed. So as long as they know what category you're in, they're on the right track. They don't have to identify it was a tractor if they can't tell, but if they can guess the category is something to do with that farmyard machinery one, then it's like, oh, it's probably farmyard machinery then. It works a bit better in that one. So, with What's Missing, there's not much else to say, really. It's a fun little party game, but I just don't think it's anything special. I would probably give this one a 6 out of 10 overall. I don't think people are going to notice it. I would be hard-pressed to think that anyone's going to be, singing the praises of this compared to a lot of other party games. And I suppose that's the main issue. There's a lot of party games out there. I mean, I've got, Dixit and all those picture card ones behind me. There's Detective Club. There's, Telestrations and Concept. And I don't own Pictomania, but that is another potential one. There's just a lot of party games out there. And I just don't think this one is going to stand the test of time and be remembered. Not to say it's not fun. And if drawing games are your thing, then I recommend you grab this one because I think it will be a nice little twist on the drawing party game genre. For me, I don't mind them, I don't go mad for them, but I just think my lack of ability to draw and the fact that this one actually has a winner and a loser is just a slight put off from a personal point. But, I mean, 6 out of 10, it's still fine. It's just not one that I'm going to seek out or hang on to. I think I will donate my copy to the Dice Portsmouth Library because I think this will be perfect for a game cafe setting. And then if I feel like playing it, I'll play it, but I'm not going to lose any sleep if I don't. And now finally, let's move on to Alubari, a nice cup of tea. This one was a bait and switch, but I knew what the bait and switch was before I started reviewing it, okay? So at least I wasn't caught out by it, but I looked at this without any knowledge and thought, Tony Boydell, where have I heard that name before? And it said, a nice cup of tea, and it's like, oh, could it be a Euro game about making tea? Fantastic, this is exactly what I want. Oh. And then you get to the description, it's like, part of the Snowdonia family. It's like, no, and yeah, it's about building a train track. The tea is in there, but it is a side thing at best. You are harvesting some tea leaves, and you can drink some chai tea to do special actions. That's about it. Apart from that, it is set in the Indian Darjeeling Railway, I think it is, and, yes, you're in the right setting for making tea, but really, it's all down to clearing rubble off tea plantations, or clearing rubble off cards, basically. It's just like Snowdonia, and building a railroad track and some stations. That was a bit of a shame. So thematically, this isn't exactly the strongest thing in the world at all. And I'm a little bit bummed out that it wasn't more about tea. However, That aside, there's a lot of positives to say about this game. So, and there's my rating, so I'm giving it away there, but hopefully you won't see too much. But on there, Darjeeling, so a town in Indian state of West Bengal, and the idea is that you are harvesting your own tea estates and assisting in the building of the Darjeeling and Himalayan Railway. So you start at one end, and then you build some track, which allows you to build stations in some of the cities, and then you keep building the track, which gives access to more cities. You clear rubble, and you acquire iron and coal in order to build the actual stations. No, iron and coal, iron and stone, to build the actual stations, but you can also use iron to grab a specialist train, which will give you like a special power for the rest of the game and give you access to potentially another worker. And the main crux of this, as you can see, it's quite a, shall we say, big board. It's a relatively big board. Come on, load up for me. There you go. So it's graphic design. It's actually pretty neat and streamlined. And I think that's the best way to describe Alubari. It is Snowdonia streamlined, but it's still a weighty game. I mean, it's still 3.13 in the weight category on Board Game Geek. And I would say that there is more to think about in this game than you would think. But rules-wise, it's just a lot easier to play and grasp. And I would say less punishing than Snowdonia. This is more the... I wouldn't even call it an entry level. It's still a Thinky Euro, but it's definitely the more accessible version of Snowdonia. And as such, I prefer this to Snowdonia. So with this, you start off at this end on the track and move your way around, all the way around, loop the loop, going around. And if you're not doing it fast enough, there's a little event wheel here because the cubes are drawn from a bag for tea cubes and stone and iron. And there are some event cubes in there which basically go around this wheel here, trigger certain events, fairly minor stuff, even though it does have an effect. But what it does end up doing is building some stations and rails if the players don't do it fast enough. So the game will progress at a relative pace, even though players might decide I'm doing something else. But here's the crux. You've still got the weather system, you've still got the tea leaf thing, you've got some rubble to clear off, but here's the main crux here. So you've got the action spaces as normal at the top, and you can place your worker on there, and you can go in order, it goes in sequence. If you drink chai, you can do an upgraded action, which is cool, but then you have the cards, and that's what one of these actions here does. Let's see if I can load up some... the internet has been a little bit slow. I do apologize for those viewing on this. Let's see. I can get back of the board. I can get the weather cards. Let's have a look at more images. Should be able to get some cards soon. Come on. Until then, here is a little music. Oh no, here we go. So you have got, you can only just sort of see it there on the right, but basically the cards all respond to a specific action. And so when you do the action, or even when no one does the action, you don't even need a worker on it, you can play the card and get some cool bonus. On top of that, a bit like in Snowdonia, the bottom of the card says that if you have done X amount of things, you can get more points. The back of the card has a weather symbol which dictates future weather conditions, and this will mean it's easier to clear rubble, harder to lay rails, better for harvest, some actions not available, a nice simple weather mechanic, but it adds a little bit of theme, and of course that is lifted right out of Snowdonia. I think the history with this was that this was originally going to be an expansion to Snowdonia, but it got so much into its own thing that they decided to just make it its own separate game, and yeah, if you threw all of this into Snowdonia, I think it would just be an absolute pig of a game. Like, way too much going on. But there's definitely a lot of thinky stuff here. So you have got placing workers. You've got improving your actions with tea. You have got acquiring the contracts. How many cards do you want? Well, they're once per game abilities, but you also might want to score points with them. You've got equipments to buy with the iron. You've got the events to anticipate. You've got building stations for bonuses. It's quite a lot to think about. However, it's not all rum and roses. There are a few things I would say is absolute rubbish. It's 1 to 5 players. Do not play this with 5 players. In fact, I would be hesitant to play this with 4. This is definitely a long game. 60 to 90 minutes as an absolute cap is a complete lie. And you should be ashamed of yourself, Studio H, for even putting that on the box. Because this is not a 60 to 90 minute game. You'll be hard pressed to play the solo mode in 60 minutes, although that probably is doable if you don't have to rule check anything. Good luck with that. But 90 minutes? No way. 2-player, maybe. And even then, I'd be a little bit, but 90 minutes with 2 players, maybe. But 3-player, 4-player, and certainly 5-player, I'm not getting this done in 90 minutes. You are talking at least a 2-hour game, and with 4 or 5 players, particularly with new players or any amount of AP, this can go on for a good 2.5 hours. It can be as long as Snowdonia, if not longer at times. It varies. Do not play this with anybody who is not used to medium weight Euros, because it will drag a lot. And this is not one of those games you want to be in when it drags. You want the turns to be relatively quick, but sadly, some people will take a while to figure out which worker space they want to go on and what card they want, because a lot of it is kind of stuff you can't plan ahead for. But it looks nice on the board. I mean, you've got the green, bright yellows in contrast with the dark green background. Graphic design is sound. I mean, the iconography is very clear. You kind of need to rule check what the event wheel does, but other than that, the contracts explain what happens in text and iconography. But other than that, there's nothing really on the board that is that confusing. So learning the game is actually quite straightforward. Teaching the game wasn't that difficult either. You've got to go through a fair amount of rules, but the actions are fairly straightforward, and if anyone's played Snowdonia, then they're already in the clear. They've already got a heads up on you. But it can just go on a bit long, and that is its main issue. But otherwise, I like this game. I do think it's a sweet game. I just think, I mean, other than the length, I wish the theme was stronger. I wish it was more about the tea than it was the train. But I would sooner play this than Snowdonia. Granted, Snowdonia probably has a lot more variety than this game, and that's another thing that kind of hurts it. There's not a lot of variety in here. You've got some different tea estates that have different levels of rubble needed on each. Whoop-de-doo, it really makes very little difference. The map will always be the same, whereas Snowdonia, you had the cards that went around the board and it created a sort of different track, and the expansions, the little mini expansions, added different tracks. So Snowdonia is definitely the one to get if you want the heavier, more tight, and I mean, this one can be tight, but it's certainly a little bit more flexible than Snowdonia was. But you want the bigger, longer, more involved version, you get Snowdonia. You want something a bit more accessible, one that I think looks a bit better in terms of color palette, but is easier to grok and still gives you a meaty game. I would stick with Alubari, and I personally would keep Alubari rather than Snowdonia. But I don't think there's much else to follow. I mean, you've got a lot to think about on your turns. There's certainly a plenty amount of tactics here. You know, deciding, ooh, do I want to go in turn order first because then I get the first dibs on the action I want? Some spaces have only got one place, so not going first is pretty detrimental at times if you're not careful. But I love having all the different contract cards with all these different abilities, and some of them mirror others, so there is some repeat. And some of them certainly are better than others. But it's nice to have the trains as well, as long as you can pay the maintenance. They are useful to get. You could focus on contracts. You could just try and build a ton of rails. I mean, getting the contracts early is recommended because then you actually know what it is you're aiming for. But yeah, I think it's a pretty sweet game. I'm glad I went into this knowing that it wasn't the tea-making game of my dreams, because that probably would have driven me nuts had I seen that. But otherwise, I think the game is pretty sound. Well produced, not too difficult to teach and grok, pretty meaty for what it is. I mean, the Board Game Geek says 45 to 120 minutes. I would say 60 to 120 minutes. 60 solo, and then gradually getting up for 2, 3, and 4 players. If you know exactly what you're doing and don't have to teach the game, you could possibly do 4-player in 2 hours. 5-player will not happen in 2 hours, end of story. But is there any other picture that would be good to show? That's a prototype image, but it's not too bad. In fact, the problem is there's not a lot of pictures for this one, which is a bit of a shame, but you do at least can get the idea that it's a lot of green. I mean, green's my favorite color, so already that's a help when it comes to this one. I'm getting like my favorite color all over the board. That's the event wheel. So the event wheel, you clear some rubble, you get some extra like harvest track, it lays a rail, it lays stations, the cubes go back in the bag, you pay maintenance, it lays more rails, you get a harvest. There's a lot of stuff that you do in this game for the meat it is. And I'm going to hang on to this one for a while. I personally would give it a 7 out of 10. I do think I would like a stronger theme. I would like it to be shorter. And I do think that the replay value is a little bit lacking on the basis that you don't have much variety other than the contract cards. But at the end of the day, it's just build X of this and Y of that. It's not like they're fundamentally different. But I would sooner play this than the normal Snowdonia. Even though Snowdonia is a fine game, I would probably give Snowdonia a 6 out of 10, and this one a 7. I don't love either game, but I think I respect both games, and I would play either game if it was on the table, but certainly I'd be like, can we play Alubari instead of Snowdonia? It's just, I want to walk up Snowdonia, I don't necessarily want to play the game. So, yeah, there's 3 reviews for you, and I hope you've got something out of there. So 7 out of 10 for Alubari, a 6 out of 10 for What's Missing, and an 8 out of 10 for Splendor Marvel. Let's see what you think of those. Let me know in the comments what you think of those 3 games. Do you agree with what I've said? Do you disagree? I'd like to hear your views. But at the moment, I'm almost about to run late to host a Stellaris game with some friends, so I'm going to start shutting down the podcast at this point, and hopefully I'll get a chance to edit it tonight. So you might get this one a little bit late on the Sunday, but hopefully you'll get it soon. So yeah, other than that, just look forward to the 40 to 31 coming this week, hopefully, and definitely sign up to those live streams for the rest of the top 100. I look forward to getting that wrapped up so that I can get into some normal top 10s, because I know you want to see me do top 10s, and people have already requested at least a Ticket to Ride top 10, like top 10 Ticket to Ride sets. I'm perfectly happy to do that, and I'll definitely do that one. That is a given. Would it be the first one? Probably, but we'll see. I've got to certainly consider all the choices, and I've got to get my Patreons at the $5 tier and upwards to vote on what top 10s they want to see first. That is one of the benefits of being a $5 Patreon. And certainly, if you can support the channel by being a Patreon, you'll be one of the most loved people in the world. Even if it's just for $1 a month, you will barely notice the dollar, but I'll notice it because I don't get a lot from this channel. So, yeah, that's it for me. I will see you on the next Broken Meeple episode video, or I will speak to you on the next podcast episode, I guess. Take care, have a good night, and remember, as always, it's only a game. Take care. See you soon.